ACW is sponsored by HpDMS. Self-care through skincare. HpDMS is for everybody. Welcome to ACW Podcast. I am Robin Gabriel Parson, your host, and our co-host today is Percy Robinson. Yes, we have a very special guest here today. Now, our focus today is nutrition. We have been talking about that new you in the new year, and we've been providing resources and tools that can really help you kind of take you into a new journey in your life. So we've been talking about physical fitness, heart health, just inspirational programs that can help you break through whatever that is you're dealing with, or whatever struggles or barriers. But we decided we want to talk about nutrition and food. Now, throughout our podcast, we have been talking about physical activity, nutrition, things that will help you focus on optimal health. But today we are going to target nutrition, and I have a very special guest here, and I'm so happy he's here with us. And he's going to really talk about his journey when it comes to food and some of his struggles. So I'm so happy you were here, Mr. Robinson. Can I call you Mr. Robinson?
Yes, you may. Or you can just call me Percy. That's fine.
Okay, Percy, I'm just kidding. All right, well, Percy, please tell the audience about yourself.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Percy Robinson. I am an ex-diabetic. And yes, you've heard that right. I am an ex-diabetic, which means I don't take medication for my diabetes. Now, my journey started in September of 2017. I was overweight, but I didn't know it was a problem, because throughout my whole life, I was always an athlete and into bodybuilding. And, I was in my 20s and early 30s, but towards mid 30s, that's when I started gaining my weight. And it didn't happen overnight. I feel that my mental health was one of the problems, dealing with depression. And so a lot of people, when they deal with depression, they have their different vices. My vice was food. So I would eat when I was happy. I would eat when I was sad. I would just eat whatever I could put my hands on. And with that, I had no activity. I wasn't doing anything. I was just sitting around watching TV and waiting for the days to pass. So fast forward, I was working at a job. It was about 45 minutes from my home. And I was getting symptoms of, it just felt like I was coming down with the flu. My face was sweaty. My vision was blurred. I didn't think anything was wrong with me. So I told my boss that, I'm not going to be able to finish my day off because, my legs were cramping and I could barely walk. So I took myself, I drove myself, 45 minutes home, but something in the back of my mind was telling me, go to the emergency room and get yourself checked out, because I was just going to go home and just try to sleep it off. So I went to the emergency room and they did just a few tests and they immediately rushed me to the ICU. And the nurse told me, Mr. Robinson, it's a good thing you came when you did, because your organs were shutting down and you were going into a diabetic coma. And after she said that, I kind of just, fell asleep and then woke back up. And the doctor and the nurse told me, I was type 2 diabetic and I was going to be on medication for the rest of my life. So I did a lot of research, because the doctors were saying, being on insulin for the rest of my life, this is going to be the price. And I was looking at the price and I was like, so I have to take this medication in order to survive. That's basically what the doctor was basically telling me. And I was thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way. So I started doing research. I was in the ICU for 5 days. I had my sister bring my laptop and my iPad, and I started doing research on what foods could I eat that were going to help me and benefit me health-wise. And that's when I turned vegan. or I was on my journey to go vegan. And going vegan, I would say, saved my life. So that's pretty much my story and how I got started on this health food journey.
Wow, Percy, that's very interesting. Now, just to back up a little bit, you basically started noticing your body changing and going through these symptoms in your adult life, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So, do you believe or feel as you were going through your evolution from a child to an adolescent to a young adult, do you think you were considered diabetic at that time, or you just didn't know?
To be honest, I didn't know. Like the signs were there, you know what I mean? Like, getting up, in the middle of the night and having to use the bathroom. Like one symptom of, being diabetic is you are peeing all the time, and it's like clockwork.
So this could have been something, and I'm really want to bring this to our listeners' attention. And I'm so thankful that you were here sharing your story, because I want our listeners to understand that taking charge of your health is very important, and starting at a very young age is very important. So my questions to you is: do you feel this is a genetic thing? Do you have anyone in your family that also was diagnosed with diabetes?
I honestly don't think it is a genetic thing, and I will double back to that. But yes, my father, he lost his life to complications of diabetes in 2005. Now, the reason why I say that it's not genetic is because eating habits, you know what I mean? Basically, we eat what our parents eat, and me growing
Correct.
up me growing up, not to say, anything bad about my parents. They did whatever they could. They did what they knew, you know. I would say you eat what your parents eat. And that's why I'm a huge proponent of trying to lead by example to my daughter. So she doesn't follow those generational curses.
I totally agree. And I'm thinking as you talk, because as I go back into my childhood, just through my family history, I had an uncle and I had quite a few people in my family that was diagnosed with diabetes, actually had to have limbs cut off. And I totally agree with you. I don't really believe it's a genetic thing. I do believe it's something that we can overcome and combat. Because again, I had family members who were dealing with diabetes. And you know, one thing, Percy, I think that's what really kind of drew me towards this whole health and wellness journey, is because I had family dealing with diabetes and I did not want to see myself on that same journey. But at the same time, my mother, one thing about it, she did make sure we ate vegetables and we didn't have a lot of sweets. And of course we had Kool-Aid, we grew up with that, but we were always active. We was always running and doing physical things and moving around. So we weren't really sedentary kids. So I think that's really saved us a lot. But then again, my mother, again, because her brother was diagnosed with diabetes, she really made sure that we were eating the proper food. So I totally do agree with you when it comes to, is it really genetic? No, it can be. And it may be something that some medical people disagree with what I'm saying, but I do feel that it can't stop at certain generations. You can change your eating habits, and just like you did. And I love what you did with your program. And that's what we're going to talk about. But I really want the audience to understand where you're coming from and where you are right now. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how this motivated you to really focus on a vegan type of diet, and how do you embrace it? And because I'm looking at all your amazing, delicious foods on YouTube. So let's talk more about that. Elaborate on that.
So basically how it started, it wasn't like an overnight type of thing. Like I woke up one day and I was like, yo, I'm going to be vegan. It was more like, basically I had to train myself. I had to unlearn the ways that I was used to eating, and I had to relearn a new way of eating. Now, when people think of vegans, I'm not saying all people think this way, but there's a certain amount of people that think that when you're vegan, there's only limited options, and I'm so sorry about there's only limited options where you can only eat salads and, stuff that is very bland. But when you really think about it, what do we put on our meat to make it taste good? We put seasoning on our meat. So I had to find a way or finesse a way of how to turn these vegetables or these plants that I was going to put in my body, and how was I going to make these taste amazing, So it was a process. It was a lot of trial and error, but what ended up happening was, like, I would start one day of the week, I would eat nothing but plants, right? And then I would just continue eating the way I was eating, and then I'll be like, okay, well, let me do 2 days a week, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. So I basically trained myself to not only eat plant-based, but I found different recipes, that I was used to eating when I did eat meat. And it helped out so much. And that's what gave me the idea. I was like, you know what? Let me come out with a channel to show people what I know and how easy it is to make this transition. Now, I'm not here to make people, or turn people into vegans. I just want them to be mindful of what they're putting into their bodies. Because, as we grow up, as we become adults, as we become parents, we have so many things that are on our minds. And the last thing that is on our minds is what we're putting in our body. We're just trying to get through the day, work, make our money, pay our bills, and make sure our kids have a roof over our head. But we're not really thinking about what we're putting into our bodies. So the idea about Diabetes Kitchen was to simplify those recipes, and add some excitement to the cooking show. Like, when I decided to come out with this cooking show, like, I didn't want to be the plain old cookie cutter type of cooking show. Like, no disrespect to Julia Childs. I watched her like as a kid and I enjoyed her show, but that wasn't me. So I had to take pieces of me, put it into the show, and turn it into a cooking show. And you find your tribe that way. Like, people respond to you that way. They're like, man, this dude is just like me, and I'm in being relatable,
Right. And I love what you do, Percy. You make it very relatable. And I love that you being very transparent with what you're sharing. You have some really delicious recipes. I love the Diabetes Kitchen. I love that whole concept. Now, let's talk about some of your recipes. Because, again, you just mentioned in reference to taking one step at a time. Like you said, you did one the vegetarian or vegan meal one day, and then you add it on. And that's exactly what you have to do. And I want listeners to understand, even when we talk about vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, whatever, it's going to take one step at a time. You can't just change overnight, especially if you've been taught throughout your life there's only one way to eat. And I hope you agree with me that it does take time. So I appreciate you sharing that. So let's talk about some of those good recipes that can help some of our people who are dealing with nutrition issues, especially people who, again, eating vegetables. That's always an issue. For some reason, vegetables and eating salads is a challenge for a lot of people. So what are some of your favorite vegan recipes that allow someone to eat vegetables and still be delicious?
Well, I'm going to start off with the one that I just did. Now, if you are a curry fan, this recipe is for you. Now, yes. I did a coconut curry chickpeas with quinoa, and it tasted amazing. Like, when I say comfort food, this is comfort food by 1,000.
that's something I really want to share with our audience, how you can eat healthy without feeling like, you've got to spend a lot of money. And I love the way you prepared it. And please share that with someone who has a very busy schedule.
Okay. So the reason why I like this coconut curry chickpea recipe is because you can go out to the store, your local store, and grab chickpeas for less than $1 a can. And I used 2 cans of chickpeas. Now, as far as the seasoning are very minimal. You have your curry, you have your turmeric, you have your masala seasoning. And then I throw a little bit of Himalayan sea salt, which is a mineral, by the way. And then you have your tomato sauce, which you can get less than $1 a can. At most, probably $1. And then you have your coconut cream. Mm-hmm. And that's all you need.
But what I also find very interesting about your recipe is that you have those nutrients you need, from the carbohydrates to the proteins to the fiber. So I want our audience to understand that though vegan sounds something that may be challenging for them, it could be a very delicious options to choosing different foods. Now, in reference to people who eat meat, what are some of the recipes that you have that people who are meat eaters that you can kind of say, oh, well, try this. This can kind of change your attitude when it comes to not eating meat. So what are some of your recipes that are meatless that still taste like meat?
Okay. So I use, so before I went vegan, my thing was buffalo wings. Like I would love to, go to the local bar, watch a football game, and eat buffalo wings, right? But I can't eat it now, right? So what I did was I was like, you know what? Let me try this cauliflower. Let me put some batter on it. And the batter that I'm using is spelt flour, which is less in carbohydrates and 0 sugars. Okay. So spelt flour is amazing. You can make spelt bread, but I'll go on about that. But the cauliflower, I call them the cauliflower wings.
Okay.
So you're going to batter them up like you're frying chicken, like you're doing the regular fried chicken. And then you just toss them around in your buffalo sauce and bam, you have buffalo cauliflower wings. And to be honest, I didn't miss chicken. The thing was, I thought I was going to miss the actual chicken, but it was the actual taste that kept me going. I was like, oh man, this is amazing. So yes, buffalo cauliflower wings is the one you want to try.
And you are so right, because I've had a couple of cauliflower experiences. I had the teriyaki. Someone prepared a teriyaki type of cauliflower. I have battered up cauliflower, and you are so correct, Percy. Once you eat them, you don't even really, in the taste, you don't really miss the chicken. I think it's all psychological. So there's other, but cauliflower is a plant food that you can use as substitute for a meat. But then you also have other foods. I like eggplant, and eggplant is another one that I also like to fry up. And being from New Orleans, I'm just sharing this with you, Percy. We like po' boys. So I love oysters, but now I kind of switched it and I use mushrooms.
Yes.
So yes. It is really delicious. So there are ways that you can change your eating and really benefit from it. But I want listeners to also understand it doesn't happen overnight. You said that, Percy. You said it. It does not happen overnight.
No, it really doesn't. And it wasn't like I had a guide, you know what I mean? Or a person telling me, yo, you should try this, or yo, you should do this. Because a lot of people that I knew, they eat meat. So there wasn't really a guide. Like I had to really just think and do research, and hopefully, like with my channel, like the goal for my channel is like, I want to be the one-stop shop of like, yo, what is Percy doing right now? You know what I mean? What recipe does he have for us this week? You know what I mean? Like, I want people to be like, okay, I'm going to stop eating meat. So let me go ahead and watch this episode and see how I can do this. Now, one thing I wanted to add, right? I was a chicken and waffle kind of dude, hands down. Like I used to go to, Roscoe's out here in California, and I would tear up some chicken and waffles. So I did an episode where it was chicken and waffles, but it was oyster mushrooms as the chicken. And I'm going to tell you this, it tasted amazing.
That sounds so good. But yeah, Percy, I really appreciate everything you're sharing. Now, I do have a question in reference to dairy products. That's another thing a lot of people still have challenges with, especially going vegan or vegetarian. What are some of your like dairy substitutes that you can use to make your, your meal or your whatever it is that you like when it comes to dairy taste like the original flavor that you're used to?
Now, I use coconut yogurt. I also use, almond milk. There's cashew milks. There is a plethora of options out there that you can use for dairy substitutions. You can also make your own milk out of almonds. And I'm thinking about doing an episode about that. Is turning almonds, making almond milk. As far as cheeses goes, I'm not going to lie. There are some cheeses out there that are they are terrible, but there's a brand,
Right.
there's a brand that I started using. I can't think of the name of it. It starts with a V, but it's on my, Via Had Tacos episode.
Mhm.
And that cheese melts so good. It tastes like the real thing.
Okay.
So, like I said, it's like a trial and error type of thing.
Right. And you have to find your place in it all. So thank you. I really appreciate you sharing this with us. We're going to be talking more about nutrition throughout this month, but I really wanted to bring you to our listeners. And just as someone who is advocating, someone who's an influencer, someone who has taken charge of their health and went out there and started creating a whole different lifestyle for himself just based on a diagnosis. And a lot of times I hate for people to have to go through a diagnosis for them to change their lifestyle, but that's okay. That's okay. The importance is having the information, and what you provide a resource and information and motivate others to say, okay, I can do this. I can do this. So thank you for that. So Percy, please share with us your YouTube channel, all of your contact info, if someone wants to get in touch with you and just talk with you as an advocate.
Well, before I do that, I want to take the time and tell your listeners to, most importantly, go out and get your annual checkups, doctor checkups. No matter what,
Yes.
go out and get checked out just to see, where you are health wise. Because I could tell you this, if I would have done that, that would have saved me a trip to the ICU, so get checked out, people.
Thank you.
Where you can find me is you can find me at on Facebook. It is Diabetes Kitchen. You can find me on Instagram. It's diabetes_kitchen. And then you can find me on YouTube, where you see brand new recipes each week, and you'll see this happy smiling face talking a little mess, on camera. On YouTube, Diabetes Kitchen. Check me out. If you like what you see, subscribe. If you don't, that's okay. We'll still be friends. And also, I just started TikTok. I think my 12-year-old daughter will be proud of me. I know she is. But yeah, my TikTok is Mr. Diabetes Kitchen, or it's Mr. Diabetes on TikTok. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So listeners, we hope you were able to intake all that valuable information. It seemed like there's so much more I want to talk about, but thank you for that, Percy. And listeners, as always, live life with purpose, intention, and love. Until next time. Thank you, Percy.
Thank you, Robin. I appreciate it.
ACW is presented by Partnerships in Fitness, a fitness and health and wellness consulting group, building strong minds and bodies, and empowering one community at a time. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and subscribe to our Pifnola YouTube channel, and leave questions or comments. You have been listening to the Awareness, Culture, and Wellness Podcast. We thank you for joining us, and we hope that you tune in to our next Wellness Wednesday as we discuss topics that heals the mind, body, and spirit. Until next time, I'm Robin Gabriel Parson, your ACW Podcast host. ACW is sponsored by HpDMS. Self-care through skincare. HpDMS is for everybody.